This didn't exist 3 weeks ago. I've been doing this for a long time now, working with Power BI, analytics, reporting, and, kind of throughout my journey, I kind of see, kind of some consistent things keep, popping up. So one of them is what's great about Power BI is you can get some dashboards. They look fantastic, drill to detail. But when someone new comes in, they have a question. It's like, okay, go here. You got to, apply 2 to 3 filters, get this context, to kind of answer that question. And to, get the documentation for that, it's like, okay, you got to go outside the system. It's somewhere else. And it just doesn't make some of the folks that aren't, familiar with the data. It's not a great experience, for them. And some of the other challenges are with exporting the data. There's limitations. You can't get the fields in the order you want. And to counter that, also just looking at the SQL side of things, right? Just with reporting, there's hundreds or, build hundreds of these, structured reports. And, you know, there's no way for customers to really kind of help self-service, right? In a way where it's like, hey, I just want these handful of fields. This is the order I want. And, this is the schedule. Just kind of send me, to my email or, on some, frequency for me to pick that up. So these are the kind of things that, I see all the time, workflows being done outside the system, things like that. And it's like, how can we do this better? So I, happen to be, just at a high level talking with my dad about this. And he's like, well, why don't you just go build it? Right? Essentially kind of, what you're seeing, just go put that together and go make it. So I thought about it. I was like, okay, Power BI does some really good things, incredibly well. But there's some gaps, right? The ability for users to collaborate inside the system, have a workflow system where those can be completed and taken care of, notifications that kind of link everything together nicely. Those are some of the gaps that I was seeing. And in addition to that, were the export limitations, right? With Power BI, like, hey, everybody at the end of the day, things are going to go to Excel and you got to be able to support that. And Power BI can export some of that out of the systems, but there are limitations on the volume size. And what I mentioned before, right, with like certain views or just, certain fields that, customers want, they don't want to be overwhelmed with like a whole 100 fields or anything like that. So I was like, okay, I see those are some of the gaps that we have. What can we do about it? What can I do about it? So then the question is like, well, why now? What's different now than, a couple years ago or in the past? And I think that's probably pretty obvious, right? With AI, that's what's different right now. So this is not something that, I really even had considered much in the past, but I'd say probably about middle of the way, 2025, I, started playing around with AI, started kind of seeing everything that was, going on. Obviously, we all started even, for those of us that are kind of playing around with this, ChatGPT and Copilot, but now you've got, Claude and tools like Cursor, and, coming online over the last, year or so. So started kind of playing around with those and trying to figure out, okay, like how can I actually go about this thing? Now, for me, what I used to kind of get started with was, Copilot. At a high level, just kind of like the strategist to kind of have, someone that I could bounce the ideas off of, kind of figure out like, hey, how are we gonna actually do this thing, right? How are we going to game plan this? What's kind of the feature execution look like? And really just kind of, help at a high level and then using, Cursor to kind of get into the weeds of it. So I'll just kind of expand on that a little bit more. My thought process going into it was, let's just treat it like an experiment. All right. I didn't necessarily set out to say, yeah, I'm going to 100% do this thing. It's like, okay, I see the opportunity. I see some ways I think I could make it better, more valuable, have that, value add there. Why not just give it a shot and let's see what happens. So first thing, didn't have to go crazy, had an MVP in mind, minimal amount of cost, right? Get I think I got like a Microsoft small business, license and subscription so I could get the Power BI Premium per user, get Azure stood up, right? Get a SQL database there that I could use for the app backend. And then Cursor, I started off with the $20 license and had too many Claude requests. So ended up going to Pro, and I'll talk about more of that in some future videos with the setup and things like that. But I found that I was able to kind of actually get a lot accomplished just on auto. But I'll cover some of that deep dive in a future video. But for minimal cost, it was basically able to just get started and keep doing it. And so the main thing with that was, we talked about how did I go from 0 to 3 weeks and the movie trailer. It was just kind of the discipline of it, right? Is for a lot of us, including myself that have a day job, your new best friend is going to be nights and weekends. And then, having the AI to work with. And I see a lot of videos about, how to use AI, all this other stuff. Go here, do that. Just start small, keep it simple. But the thing is just, I use Copilot to kind of figure out like, hey, what's the features? What's the execution that I should kind of work through those? And that could be Copilot or, talk to any of the AI agents within Cursor as well. That's what I used. And they'll walk you through it and say, hey, what's the best practice that I can work with you, right? And you learn about things like skills and roles and other things that are out there. And as you kind of go along that journey of how to, really make the best of these applications. But the key thing was just start small, map it out, and just stick to it. And kind of doing that over the course of a little over 3 weeks. That was, kind of code complete as far as an MVP. Obviously, there's still things that I'm going to, continue to add as we move forward. But then even after that, AI is able to help out the whole journey, right? Like what's next? How do you get to YouTube? How do you get these videos? Like how do I even get what we're doing right here going? So it's been super helpful along the entire way. And I really kind of see it as just a AI journey from start to completion and even now. And you don't need an engineering team to do this. Now, I'm not going to say that's for all use cases, right? It's been working for me really well. Depending on what you're trying to do, right? Results may vary. So last thing that I'll add is the long form video is out. So, feel free to check it out if you want to see kind of a deep dive into the application that we have so far. I'll be adding more like behind the scenes builds, kind of talking through like, hey, how did I in more detail use AI to kind of get this journey going? And we'll talk about more in the future about like opening up early access for those of you that may be interested in wanting to kind of go in there and use WarpMind Ascendant for yourself. And if you want to continue to follow the journey, subscribe. All right, we'll see you next time.